Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Waz, aka Wozni Lambre, and I'm joined, man, this week a very special guest. This brother runs a podcast that, is a big part of my media consumption and diet. Just one of the best people doing it, as far as I'm concerned, in the indie left media space. We even gonna call you black media, Jason, just to get on your nerves. We're gonna call you Negro media too.
Fuck yeah, man. That means
Jason
I've arrived.
Myles of This Is Revolution podcast.
Hey,
man.
thank you. That means I've arrived. If I get called black media. When you're not called black media, you haven't gotten there yet. So I got a black ass show.
No, I mean, to me, it's extremely black if you don't have a narrow vision.
Yeah.
So much of what gets accepted as what can be black in media is crafted by these fancy ass Negroes with their 500 degrees and their so obviously class project that something like what you guys do will be seen as, oh, these guys aren't racial essentialists enough. Oh, these guys, they're not as they're not as obsessed with racial strife and yada yada yada. This ain't really black in that case. And again, I think that shit gets defined by the bougiest, the most elite Negroes in existence in America today. And so, man, for my money, there's nothing blacker than what you guys do. Obviously, I've had Pascal up here before, my Haitian brother, Queens brother. He's a fellow. Me and Pascal went to the same high school. He's a St. Francis Prep Terry. I think he graduated the year I was born, but still.
That sounds about right.
The nigga went to my high school. So, obviously, I feel very close to the work that you guys do. I'm really happy to have you on today, man.
I'm really stoked to be here, man. Pascal is a wonderful person to have as a co-host, as is M. Toussaint, your Haitian sister, I guess we could say.
And she's from Queens too, M. Toussaint.
Yeah, she went to a different school. She went to the Fame High School.
She went to the Fame High School?
The high school that the movie Fame and the TV show Fame is based on.
The other day she said she had to test or something that had to be scores, and like in Queens is really the only real specialized school in Queens that isn't like LaGuardia, which is like the performing arts shit.
I think that's the one. Is that the one, the Fame School? Because that's the one.
Yeah.
She went to,
She went to LaGuardia. Oh wow. Okay.
I believe she went to the performing arts one. Yeah, that's why I always tease her about did you have to have a dance off if you guys? Got
oh my God, Jesus Christ! Yeah,
like that. Yeah,
I think Nicki Minaj went there. A bunch
that
of like famous people.
Yep.
Went to that school.
Khalees.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Khalees,
yeah, LaGuardia. Okay, so you know the name of it.
Yeah.
We like to call it the Fame School because it's more fun, and also people can't try to find her.
Okay.
But it's fun
to be able to figure it out,
make fun of her and her going to the Fame School, and I've seen that movie.
Being a performing arts theater kid, I assumed she went to one of the gifted and talented program.
No, so she's not. So what? She's an artist.
Oh,
she's an art major in fashion. So that's more of her speed. We're actually going to do a show later this month about art and pop art and
so by the way, that speaks to my own biases, Jason. I assume she was some kind of quant because I'm like, man, this is a smart broad. I just assumed she was some kind. Obviously, she don't waste her time with this arts and craft bullshit.
Yeah, she wastes her time with arts and crafts bullshit. Yeah. She's really just she's a very, very look. I'm blessed that I do a show with some of the most intelligent people I've ever been around.
Hell yeah.
And it's always if you listen to it, you always hear us kind of learning something. And to say we haven't learned anything from each other on the show is definitely a humongous lie. So, and it's not just those guys. We also have like Kuba and Jean Bajlan and some others, sometimes wide. Even Bert Cooper is a sometimes why. Paul Prescott from Jacobin fame is a sometimes why of the TIR family. So, it's a blessing to be able to do a show like that and then to be able to like talk shit with these people on air as well.
Yeah.
And have a good time.
It's important to be a human being on air. I think that's
That's my whole
I
thing.
think that's an ultimate lesson. And you know, one of the things I will say, and I don't mind flattering you guys, man, because I really do believe in you guys' project and what you guys do. I think one of the biggest influences of consuming the work that you guys do is in my own life is a sort of emphasization. I don't know if I'm saying de-emphasis
Mhm. I know what you mean.
on um the racial quality of my politics, right?
Mm.
In the sense that obviously I'm clearly a black guy. My influences are extremely black. My upbringing, I grew up in black neighborhoods. I went to black schools. In the sense that that's who my cohort were, my peers were. I didn't have a black classmate until ninth grade, right? I've never been to a white person's crib who
Mhm.
was my peer until like ninth grade, high
Got you.
school.
Got you. Mhm.
And you know, I'm just basically giving people my nigga resume. Like, don't get it twisted. But like, you know, like I've grown to just view very skeptically just how my politics should be shaped in relation to my blackness.
Mhm.
And when prominent black people like Jay-Z, right,
Mhm.
who wears his best suit to go to the Grammys, and he starts complaining about his wife not getting this one specific accolade,
Mhm.
where again, Jason, like we know that Beyonce knows like her domination of culture is
Yeah.
complete, it's total.
Yeah.
There is no questioning it.
Yep.
Like she has achieved it. She's won.
Yep.
She any artist would be like, if I could have 10% of what Beyonce has achieved in culture and art, I
Mhm.
could they would literally give their left arm to achieve
Easy.
10%
Mhm.
of Beyonce's success, right?
Mhm.
And Jay-Z gets up there and he's complaining about this one fucking award
Yeah.
from this one body. And the subtext, Jason, is that it's because she's black. And I'm supposed to internalize that as part of my black politics.
Mhm.
I just
Mhm.
fucking reject that shit.
The
You
the
know,
PMC racial grievance, I call it.
it's
Yeah.
absurd. And I think, you know, honestly, consuming media like you guys, like This Is Revolution,
Mhm.
it's something that I feel like I've always felt but couldn't really articulate. I can remember like the first time I ever interacted with black people who were not from my neighborhood for real.
Mhm.
And even the black kids at my high school at St. Francis Prep, we were all from the same neighborhoods,
Yeah.
essentially, like these working class, blue collar, you know, and some professionals in our neighborhood, but we
Mhm.
were all essentially of the same cohort in
Mhm.
Queens, in basically Jamaica and places like that. The first time I interacted with black people who were not from my background, niggas that couldn't hang out on my block,
Mhm.
all right,
Mhm.
was in college
Mhm.
at Penn State, and I can remember not liking these niggas. I did not like them. I did not enjoy my experience with the blacks that I encountered in college. And then, of course, like all of the fraternity, sorority shit, and like all of the shit that Negroes do in elite spaces just
Mhm.
didn't speak to me. I was just like, again, like, I just could never have seen myself hanging out with you in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like you just wouldn't have been a kid that I would
Mhm.
have wanted to spend time with, right? And it's something that I've always felt, but honestly, like, you know, the kind of scholarship that your guests can bring to
Yeah.
these sort of conversations, and
Yeah.
even you and Pascal yourselves from your background and shit like that,
Yeah.
has better articulate this feeling that I always had about certain type of
It's
Negroes.
it's weird. So I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. I was born in Oakland, California, and I grew up in a city called Richmond, California. It's a ghetto, right? Just,
Mm.
you know, all the stereotypes of ghetto shit, uh, from drive-bys to drug using parents to, you know, being around.
Fatherlessness.
Yeah, whatever stereotypes
Yeah,
you
type
need
that
me
they had.
to
Yeah.
fit, you know,
Yeah.
for your black shit to work. That's where I grew up. But my father, when I was about 15, got a job for a school district that was adjacent to where we're from, but it wasn't in our city. and he said he had paid for me to go to private school for 1 year, and he goes, I can probably do it again, but he goes,
but I'd rather not.
Yeah, he goes, you could transfer to this school, and I said, I'll just transfer to that school, and I ended up knowing one guy from growing up in Richmond that ended up going there as well, because they didn't have a lot of out of district transfers, is what we called it. So it was a whole different world, and the black people there kind of came from a different world. But for me, it was more intriguing than it was like, well, fuck this guy, because I had never been around cats like this that were from like, lines of college graduates,
right?
and,
like they are the fourth generation of college grad, and they're Negroes.
Hella juice for report card day. Nigga, what'd you get? Oh, nigga, you ain't never gonna make the honor roll. And I was like, I've never heard people talk like that. You know what I mean? Like, I went to school with Devon Franklin. If you're familiar with Devon Franklin, he's a Hollywood producer.
Not familiar with him, but okay.
He was married to Megan Good. He's like Oprah's
fucking
confidant, religious guy, whatever. But it was an interesting environment to go to school in. You're right next to Berkeley. I went to school with a bunch of hippies kids. So right then and there, everything I know about the world is just getting flipped on its head. Because these people look like me, if not blacker than me.
Yeah.
Color-wise. But their reality is very different than my reality. Where they're going home to is not where I'm going home to. You know what I mean? So that right there kind of woke me up. And then, I've had a kind of a weird life. I played crazy, heavy, loud, like punk and metal music.
Yeah, niggas don't do that.
Niggas don't do that. I was like, yeah.
Niggas don't join metal bands.
They don't join metal bands.
We don't do that.
They don't hang upside down from the fucking rafters and play guitar. And, they don't do any of that fun stuff that I got to do for a few years. And so I've kind of spent my life as this weird outsider. Like, I also worked in the Gulf of Mexico. I know I'm jumping all over the place. I also worked in the Gulf of Mexico for a little bit, and cooking on oil rigs. And I had no idea what an oil rig was, where the Gulf of Mexico was.
Wow. How do you even get that job?
I guess the short story is I applied to an ad because I had lost everything when the market crashed. And I saw an ad that said, if you cook on cargo ships, you can make a lot of money. And I thought, well, an oil rig's got to be like a cargo ship. And then reality was like, no, my brother. And so I took the last money I had and a Greyhound bus to apply for the job in Lafayette, Louisiana. Wow. And I got it, and I was on a rig for like 40 some days. And then I went home for a while, and I did it again I did that for about a year, where I would stay out there for as long as I could handle like crazy white people shit and then ignorant nigga shit. And then like that also was another thing where like black people hated me because I talked different. And they were like, are you gay?
It was like, you think you talking down to me.
Yeah. And I was like, nigga, I just said hello. I didn't know. Should I doff my hat? I don't know how to. You want me to say it like Hoke and Driving Miss Daisy? Like, I don't know how to. But then I'd never been around black people like this. I'd never been around black people that chewed tobacco and hunted. And I'd never been around, illiterate black people. There's always an 80s or 90s after school special where there's some Negro playing basketball that can't read. Right. But I'm not even joking with you, was my first day. I walk in the galley is what you call it. And the head chef, the steward would be his title, looks at me and he goes, you that boy from California. And that was for like months. That was the first thing everybody said to me. And I was like, yes. And he's like, how the fuck they got smart gangsters in California the way you niggas talk? And I was like,
it's because the people out here in California enunciate their words, and people associate that with intelligence, man. Y'all really enunciate every
letter.
You're in
LA. Look, you're in LA. I'm from the Bay. LA for me is a whole different planet. It might as well be New York.
It is.
It might as well be New York. That's how different LA is to me. And I get that because there is a similarity in some of the ways certain LA people talk. They have their own accent, in my opinion. But there was also like certain cultural things that I didn't get. Like when people would say like, oh, this guy's got a reading problem. I didn't know what that meant. I thought he needed glasses. Like, oh, he doesn't have glasses. That's a shame. I was like, oh, well, let me bring it closer to his face. And they're like, no. And like, I remember they yelled at me, like, no, nigga, I can't read. And I was like, like, and I don't want to sound like I'm making light of this now. I'm not making fun of them. I'm making fun of me and my ignorance.
Yeah, you just didn't know. It didn't. It wasn't. It didn't map onto what you had experienced in the Bay.
No, and God, that experience blew my mind because also I was around white people that couldn't read. I was around a lot of people. Like literacy and the oil field, two things you think should go hand in hand. Not necessarily. And it was a shocking, like a lot of things that we think are culturally ours, that we have some sort of ownership to. And I bought into that, right? A lot of us do buy into that.
Oh
shit.
yeah,
we own grits.
Yeah. Or barbecue or something.
Or just goofy shit that you think is like yours, like is culturally ours. The first day I was there, I had to make breakfast. They're like, you have to make grits. And I remember looking at the steward. I was like, but there's no black people here but us. And he looked at me like weird, like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, but they don't eat that. He's like, just nigga, just make them. Like, I'm gonna tell you what to do. You just do it. Fucking don't ask questions. And I
like, I know the white palate, sir.
Yeah. I'm like, I went to school with these people, sir. There's a lack of mayonnaise in here, my man. I was like, there's no way. This is how stupid I am.
Yeah.
I will never forget this day, Waz, and I'm so mad you're making me remember this very tumultuous time in my 46 years of life. I remember it was hot. It's the South. It fucking, again, I'm from the Bay Area. It's the same. You live in California. The weather's the same all year for the most part, right?
Yeah.
You probably have a light jacket on right now.
Yeah.
So it's like summertime in the South. It's just gross.
It's insane.
And so they
especially in Louisiana. Oh my God.
I'm off the coast of Louisiana.
Yeah.
So think about that. I'm off the coast of Louisiana. I'm the stupid ass California kid.
You ain't never been that hot in your life.
Never been this hot in my, not even close. I'm looking at all these people like, how do you people do this? I understand the color purple on another level. I'm just looking at all these people. Like, I'm walking around with a fan, like a plantation owner. Like, I declare it's another scorching June. So I would do this thing where, because I wasn't making much money, and I would send all the money I had home because I'm living on the rig and I'm eating for free. So I was like, whatever I make, I can send home. And they would let me stay a little longer. I'm only supposed to work in 2-week shifts. I was this one's one for like a month and a half. And so sometimes my job would change within the kitchen. And so one day I was doing prep. I had a prep shift for 2 weeks. And so they're like, Jason, we need you to cut that watermelon up right now because these guys are going to come in from break and they're going to be hungry. And once again, I was like, but no.
I don't.
Like, is this, are you guys fucking with me? And so they're like, and they again, boy, cut up the water. So
yeah, people eat watermelon.
So frighteningly, right? I'm cutting. I'm like, okay, we're gonna see. And I cut it up and I present it the best way I can because I just want to see. And then I sat back once and I watched these white people fuck that shit up. Like I'd never, like you see all the movies that people, and then
it just basically disappeared.
Yeah. I just watched white people like rejoice in the joy of cold watermelon on a hot day, and I was just like, maybe I can eat it now.
So you were anti-watermelon because
I was one of those guys. Like, I'm not going to eat this in front of you. How can I enjoy this when I know that if once every bite is going to be like,
So I'm glad you gave us, a little bit of insight into some of the experiences that you've had in different parts of the country, right? Like, for instance, I've never been to North Dakota, Wyoming, South Dakota. I remember telling Matt Lech, I was like, yo, fam, if somebody told me that Montana was just a rumor, was just a hoax, that it didn't actually exist on the map, I would believe that. I would think that was plausible.
It's beautiful country.
Because that part of the country is nothing for me. I got nothing. I don't know any people. I have no idea what it looks like. I don't know what they do over there, all of that. But I feel like you developed a left politics pretty early on in your life. I really want to get into how that developed for you.
I don't know. I always started with my grandfather. He was a bishop, actually, of several churches throughout Northern California, and then I got to live with my grandparents when I was really young. Again, real, niggerish ass. He called his grandmama mama and his mama.
I mean, living with your grandparents is a very black, not middle class situation.
Yeah, and I had that situation for a while, which I really appreciated, and I was back and forth with my grandparents and my mom, and my grandfather would tell my grandma every so often, he's like, put the boys' clothes on him, and that meant that I wasn't going to school, and I was going to be like dressed up, and I was going to accompany him to do his rounds of the day, which was like going to hang out with old people, going to hang out with sick people, and then just kind of hanging around the community. So being around him at a young age, he instilled, kind of without trying, a certain value of just people to me. And then I'm going to make me emotional because my father is actually very ill right now. And then my own father lived in a horrible part of where we're from in Richmond. And it was so bad, like we couldn't do things. Maybe you're from a similar area because you're from New York, but you couldn't trick or treat over there and have parties. So my dad would throw parties for the neighborhood kids because he's like, if kids should be able to experience things like Easter and Christmas and Halloween without fear of getting shot. And this is also the 80s and 90s. This is a violent
where people
time.
were legitimately getting shot all the time.
That's my younger brother, who's 38. That's his first memory, is me covering him, as these kids were learning how to shoot, and they were just shooting at us for fun. I was about 12 and he was 3, and that's like his first memory. So, that attitude instilled something in me, being from the Bay Area, actually going to that high school that I went to, because I did go to school with a bunch of ex-hippies and Panthers kids. That was a huge influence on me. So I feel like I'm kind of always a sponge for all the stuff that's around me. And then the goofy shit that I've done in my life, like deciding, fuck it, I think I could play this music all over the world. And then going all over, because when you're nobody, you're never in A markets. You're never in New York City and in LA and Chicago. You're in Butte, Montana, and Mandan, North Dakota, where Matt Lech is from, and Aberdeen, South Dakota, where I've been numerous times. And some of those places weren't that hospitable. Some are. It's just like being in Richmond, California for me. For a lot of these places, I can walk into to different parts of flyover country, as they call it, and it's just like home. And again, that really does form the way I see the world. I don't think all white people are wonderful, but being a stranger in a strange place constantly, because we toured a lot. These posters behind me, I don't know if this is going to be a visual podcast. They're tour posters from over the years, and my ex and I, we played like 100 shows a year for like 6-7 years. Wow. We were always somewhere.
150 shows a year.
Yeah, we were always somewhere that wasn't
basically
home.
Living on the road, living out of like motels, essentially.
Don't you wish?
Oh, so you guys were just living in the car?
In the car first, then we got a van, and then just people's. That's another reason I know so many people, because there's so many floors I
Yeah, I
stayed
need
on
somewhere to
a floor
crash.
everywhere. Different parts of the world, we stayed on floors, man. So, yeah.
And I'm gonna bring this up because you oftentimes bring this up on the show, but like, do you think maybe your lady wanted to break up because she was tired of sleeping on floors?
Oh, fuck yeah. Oh man, you must have listened to that Champagne Room where the guys got me honest. So, for your listeners that don't know, so I was tour managing a band when I met my now ex, and we're in Vegas of all places. She was doing promotions for a club, and she handed me a flyer. We got to talking. Of course, I thought she was attractive, and she told me she played music. I told her tour managing a band. I was like, look, check this. Why don't you quit this job, come with me to the Bay Area, and we'll hold hands and play music all over the world.
This nigga is straight out of a Cameron Crowe movie. He gotta stop. Somebody get this nigga, please.
And if you don't, there's documented interviews. There's
met in Las Vegas.
In Las Vegas.
Quit your job.
Which
I'm sure was paying her bills, doing all of that.
Yes.
Move to the Bay Area with me. We're gonna hold hands and play music all over the world together.
Yeah.
And it worked for a little while.
7 years. 7 years. First, I came to Vegas. I came to Vegas for a few months. Then we went to the Bay Area, and then we just started going from there. We started recording like crazy and playing and playing and playing. And on the last tour, the second to last big run that we had, we had circled the country like 6 or 7 times, like in a row. Like our booking agent just kept calling us. We'd be done with a run, and he'd go, "Hey, I got 2 shows for you in 2 days in Kansas." Okay, wow. You guys are in Illinois now, right? Yeah. Okay, well, once you get to Kansas, and then I got a whole route planned for you to go. It's like, okay, and we just did it, and we did it, and we did it, and we did it. And then the van, we went through like 2 vans in that tour, and then finally the last van broke down outside of Bismarck, North Dakota, trying to get to Wyoming. We were really bummed. We took a train back home with whatever we could carry, and we were going to sell the rest of the stuff and quit. And we didn't speak for 3 days on an Amtrak train ride, and he turned our phones off. So it was the quietest I've ever spent in my life. Maybe the same for her as well. And then, you know how you'd be so mad and hurt that, I don't know if you ever took an Amtrak train. So I just took the whole train ride in the scenic car. So she stayed in both the seats. So she slept on the seats. I stayed in the scenic car for 3 days, hung out with some Amish people. That's what I did.
And, right. And that's when it was like, okay. Yeah.
I was like, it's done. And so we got out and we had arranged for a ride. And once we got out, we were getting our stuff, and she opens her phone and she goes, "Oh my God," she starts crying. And these people that were fans of us had started some sort of GoFundMe, whatever it was at the time, and raised enough money that we didn't have to sell our stuff. We could pay our rent. I think we worked a job for a couple weeks or something, and then we had enough money to buy another van. And then we did it again. We had finished this one record, and we did another big tour. And after that tour, she was getting kind of frustrated. I could see. She went home to her native Canada, where she's from, for a week. And then probably 6 months after that, she ended up taking off, just super out of the blue. I was gone working a job in the desert for about a month and a half, and I came back home and everything was gone. No warning, nothing.
I appreciate that detour, man, because I think it is a big part of your story, or at least as for me, again, as somebody who listens to damn near every single episode of the show, like this comes up all the time. Yeah, when my ex took off on me, it's almost like
oh, dude.
How Marin always brings up like the death of his wife and blah blah blah. Like that's you guys' version of that. When your ex took off. So I just had to bring that up. So anyway, again, listen to the podcast. I want to talk to you about, how did you start the podcast as this thing that would be about, left-leaning politics?
Man, you know, again, being from where I'm from and growing up at a crazy barbershop. Have you ever seen the movie Coach Carter?
Of course.
Okay, so that dude owned the barbershop that was down the street from my house.
Like actual Coach Carter owned it.
Ken Carter.
Wow.
Yeah. And so all the cats that worked there had like cool side hustles and shit, right? And then all the hustlers and shit came in there. It was the place to be when you were, for me, when I was a teenager in Richmond, California. And I just loved being in there and being kind of a fly on the wall sometimes as you waiting at a, you know, average black barbershop on a weekend, to the point where I started getting my friends from high school in this other city called Albany, California. Like, you got to come to my barbershop. This is the most fun place you're ever going to go to. My Asian friends coming to, you can understand, this is the most fun place you're ever going to go to. So having that kind of vibe, I was like, I always want to do something like that. And then kind of fast forward a bunch of years later, my ex and I lived in this warehouse in West Oakland, California called Soundwave Studios. So if your viewers are familiar with
we got some Bay Area listeners for sure.
Oh, word. If you guys are familiar with Boots Riley's Sorry to Bother You, a lot of his sets for that movie, I don't know about the last thing he did there because I haven't been there in a while, was built there. Tons of music videos are shot there. I'm talking E40 videos, Too Short videos. Name a genre of music, it was done there. And I had this place that I lived in, and I was like, why don't we do a show here? And that was always kind of we didn't know how to do it at the time. And then the last tour, years after my ex left, I was doing another project with some friends. And I was like, why don't we have a podcast when we're not touring? Because we live amongst all of our heroes, like literally live amongst all of our heroes. And it's nothing to have the most interesting conversations. Like, do you remember the rapper Paris?
I do.
From the 90s? I remember once there was a rapper named, what is this guy's name? Filthy Rich. Do you know Filthy Rich, the rapper?
Not familiar with Filthy Rich, no.
He did a video and they were like, dude, this is a big budget video. This is like, I think they spent like $30,000 in this video. It's a pretty big. So Paris came in and me and Paris are talking. I'm like, yeah, this is a $30,000 budget. And Paris laughed. He goes, I think my first video budget was like $150,000 and that was like a cheap video. And me and Paris having this really fun conversation about coming up on a label in the early 90s. And, you know, we also had some mutual friends and stuff like that he had worked with that I worked with when I was younger. And I was like, you know, if I could find a way to do this with my bandmates, this would be so much fun. My bandmates thought it was the stupidest idea they'd ever heard. They're like, why the fuck would we do that? And it sounds like no one wants to hear us talk about stupid shit. I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, we have all these interesting people here. They're like, nah, you do that then.
Yeah.
And I did it. I would go to the studio and I did it from there. And then when what do you call it? The shelter in place happened. I'm trying not to say anything to get the video pulled. When the shelter in place happened, then I started hitting up more authors and academics and stuff like that. And a good friend of mine goes, Jason, because the show is originally called Soundwave. So if you listen to the early shows, like episodes 1 to like maybe 20 something, because I lived in Soundwave Studios, a friend of mine goes, hey man, that doesn't work for what you do because you're getting so political now and music is such a background thing than what you do. Yeah. I have some ideas. There's a lyric in one of your songs where you say, this is not a war, this is revolution. Why don't you call the show This is Revolution? And here's some logos that I made for you.
Wow. Shouts to that friend.
Mike Cobra. Shout out to Mike Cobra. He's a great guy. Yeah.
I love that. And then now, you know, you guys are to the point where, again, like, it's like authors and all of these great thinkers from the left. And I'm happy, honestly. I don't need to hear from the right, to be honest with you.
I
know there's people that's just like, oh, well, you should have such and such up there to debate him. I'm just like, for what? Nobody needs that shit. Like, I think it's important to just arm our people with the knowledge and the understanding to go out into the world, man. Like, talking to these right wingers is a waste of time. And like I said, man, like the characters, like you said, Kuba and Varn and all of these guys, all of the people that come around are just incredible to me, and I always feel enriched by that. And the reason why you're even up here, Jason, just to pivot, is I was listening to the podcast that you did with Bert, and I'm forgetting the other brother's
Jason
name.
England.
Jason England. He's great, by the way.
Yes, brilliant brother.
And you guys were talking about the revolutionary capacity of hip hop. And you know, what does it even mean to make revolutionary commercial art, even if it's even possible at all, right? And this is a question that fascinates me because, and this is specific to me, the time that I grew up in, where I grew up in, all of that, right? So, and I talk about this all the time. I basically came of age as a rap fan. 1994, 95. I'm 7 or 8 years old. I'm living in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
Bad Boy is dominating the radio.
Yeah.
Dominating. Biggie Smalls is not just the biggest rapper in New York. He is an icon already. He's a symbol of what niggas in my neighborhood think is
Craig
right.
Mack is still a thing. Craig Mack is still
a
remix. You're talking about the Craig Mack's Flavor in Your remix with Biggie.
Of course. That's when I'm coming of age as a person. I'm just like, yo, I love this music. This guy, Biggie Smalls, and this label Bad Boy is speaking to us directly, it seems like. And this is my shit, right? And then I learned years later, Jason, I learned that there were quote unquote underground heads in New York City, backpackers who thought Biggie Smalls wasn't cutting it.
Yeah.
That Bad Boy was making bullshit music. Yeah. That this was sellout crap and junk. And I learned that there were people who thought Biggie Smalls was bullshit. Yeah, Jason, when I tell you this blew my mind, and again, when you dig deeper into it, it's just this idea that there was real rap music about serious things that didn't have anything to do with the shit Big was talking about. And that was real hip hop. And that was the truest essence. And that was what hip hop was always supposed to be about. This quote unquote conscious, you know, politically, or what, I don't even know what these conscious niggas was conscious of, by the way. This conscious whatever type of rap. And then there was the quote unquote BS that people like that Biggie Smalls was doing. And of course, later on, I become a very huge Jay-Z fan. And to this day, I'm a fan of the music Jay put out at the time that I grew up. You know, I still love that music. If even if I have a lot of issues with his politics these days. But I've always felt skeptical of the idea that there was a revolutionary capacity to hip hop and rap music that just was not realized because niggas wanted to make money and buy cars.
I'll let you in on something that I never said on the main show. Was the whole impetus of the show was a Pete Rock Instagram post that pissed me off. Pete Rock posted this white dude talking about the cultural significance of the music that Black people listen to and why they are culturally defective. This is Pete Rock, who to this day, you could put on the first Pete Rock and CL Smooth records, instrumentals, on a loop, and I could work all day, clean my house all day, have the greatest day ever, right? I'm a fan of even the newer stuff that I've heard of him. But when you listen to a lot of dudes from that era talk, you're like, Jesus Christ, you guys are reactionary and extremely conservative. And the original thing, I didn't know what to call the show, because I wanted to call it like "Fuck These '90s Niggas."
Yeah,
sure. When you think about Cube and, you know, kind of all those golden era age rappers, if they're not the big dick deviants, as Cat Williams calls them, then they're super reactionary and hanging out with like Tucker Carlson, asking for more Black capitalism. But you know, on that show, Bert,
shouts to Killer Mike.
Right, like there's a lot of projection that went into rap And the same thing happened with a genre of music that I don't like to call a genre of music, which is grunge, where there's an aesthetic to it, a visual aesthetic to it that made you think, okay, well, this thing is over now. This gaudy, over the top hair metal thing is over. We have real rock and roll with grunge. Like, okay, I guess. And you can say the same thing about the way people look at a certain era of hip hop. But Mobb Deep, who gets kind of lumped in with these golden era people because they have these boom bap kind of beats, they're killing people on every record.
Oh yeah, 100%.
There's a lot of murders. There's a lot of murders on a
yeah. Record. There is.
Wu-Tang is lumped in with the golden era of hip hop. There's quite a few murders on a Wu-Tang record as well.
Yeah.
And what was interesting to me was in my neighborhood, people that wouldn't listen to quote unquote backpack or conscious rap, whatever has a name now, it was just rap back then, right? They didn't listen to that stuff, but they loved Wu-Tang and Mobb Deep because of that gangster aesthetic.
Imagery.
Yeah. So regardless of the way the music sounded, they love the imagery. So rap for me has always been this thing because I'm just old enough to remember when gangster rap became a thing and rap was just rap. And I worked for a kids TV show for the goofy jobs. And part of the TV show was a guy named Biz Markie was part of it. Shout out to Biz.
Of course, he's a legend. Biz Markie is actually, I think he's from Long Island, actually. He's got from Long Island.
Very, very comfortable upbringing, that Biz Markie, and would never lie about it, right? Which is another thing I respected about rap of that era, because even Pascal talks about it. These guys aren't lying about where they're from. Again, there's a lot of projection from people talking about the genre, opposed to the people rapping about this.
Yeah, Biz Markie was raised on Long Island in Brentwood, in the village of Patchogue. Like, it's nice. It's nice.
And would never tell you, would never try to act like I'm from we didn't have blah, blah. No, because why would you wouldn't talk about that?
Yeah.
That's good time shit, right?
Yeah.
And you listen to old Run DMC records, they tell you what university they went to.
Yeah, literally.
So being
DMC literally went to St. John's. It's like an engineering major or something crazy like that.
He told you on the track. But once it kind of just became cool to overhype that everybody is from the hood, and this music started because 1,800 niggas stole music equipment. And I'm always like, really? Because the watch riots happened. It wasn't like every block had a funk band. Come on. I'm sure a few people stole some
shit. About that part of it is that the South Bronx, where everybody agrees is the birthplace of hip hop, was a very dilapidated, basically neglected area, blighted area, fucked up area, projects, crazy shit,
falling apart,
burnt out cars, all of that shit. Like, that's legitimate. Now, again, Run DMC, Russell Simmons, Steve, a bunch of these guys are from my neighborhood. So so just so you could know, I was born in Brooklyn, lived in Brooklyn till I was 12. My mom said, fuck Brooklyn. We got to go to Queens because that's where the upwardly mobile Negroes is at. So my mom bought a house in Queens, in a neighborhood called Queens Village, which is adjacent to Hollis, which is adjacent to Cambria, where Pascal is from. This is like all within not even half a mile radius of each other. All of it is right there. And that's where Run DMC's from, LL's from, Tribe Called Quest, I believe, is from St. Albans, which is where we're from. DJ Clue, you name it. Like, it's just a bunch of these Irv Gotti, Jaru, all these guys are from Hollis, Queens Village, St. Albans, Cambria, which is northern Jamaica, right? What we call in Queens the North Side. And if you ever go there, I remember when I moved to Queens, I was like, oh, these niggas got grass. These niggas got front and backyards. Like, damn, this shit is lit. I remember because we only lived in apartment buildings, and then my mom had rented a whole house right before we moved to Queens. But that was like maybe 4 years of my life that we did that. But like we lived in apartment buildings, and everybody I knew damn near lived in an apartment building. And I remember going to Queens in this area where literally all these guys are from. Like they're all from maybe a third of a mile from the house that I grew up at. And so, like, your life was not on the line in Queens. You know, there might have been in Queens Village. There might have been there was a couple crackheads, especially by the time I got there. It wasn't the early '90s or mid '80s, but there was still a few crackheads in Hollis. But for the most part, man, it's like niggas that work for the city, bus driver, MTA workers, like nurses, like niggas own their crib. Like it can't be that bad if you guys are homeowners, literally, right? And so, yeah, just this idea that hip hop, and again, nobody will ever disagree that Russell Simmons is foundational to this shit, and especially the commercialization of it. Like that, all of these guys were from the quote unquote bottom is just simply not true.
And I never understood why it had to be so necessary for that story to be true for authenticity's sake. And I've been kind of struggling with the notion of authenticity as well. I don't want to diverge. We can put a pin in that. If you want to get back to that later, we can have a conversation about that. But as far as like hip hop goes, I'm a massive fan of it. I attempted to do it as a young person.
I didn't know this. What was your rap name?
It was my name.
Okay.
I was one of those.
You was a pioneer. You was before Kanye West. You was before.
Well, you know, I have a name that just is J Myles. Where's J Myles at? So it's like
Myles.
It's J, right? So we had a rap group and we recorded a single with the DJ of this up and coming rap group at the time in 1997 called the Black Eyed Peas.
Wow. Isn't will.i.am from the Los Angeles area?
will.i.am, yeah, all those cats are from LA.
Some shit.
Yeah, those cats are all from the Valley. So we went to the Valley.
Okay,
a friend of ours had grew up with a dude named Ben Yad, who was in the group. He was the first group that Eazy-E signed. It was two Jewish cats called Blood of Abraham, and this dude had moved up to the Bay. Your word, and yeah,
we gotta chill out with the rap. Blood.
You didn't know that, did you?
Blood of Abraham.
You didn't know that? Yeah, they were on Arsenio Hall show. You gotta check that out. So he was at this time he had stopped rapping really and was directing videos, and then he had their first album. They had Black Eyed Peas on it when Black Eyed Peas was called At Band Clan. So all these dudes had like grew up together in the Valley. And so our boy was like, why don't you come down to my boy Ben Yad's and we can record this thing and the Black Eyed Peas will be there. We're like, well, who the fuck are the Black Eyed Peas? We didn't know they didn't have a single yet. And or maybe they had a single, but we didn't really know who the fuck they were. And my one friend who comes on the show, I think you met him, Coach Will.
Yeah.
Coach Will, you know, he's like, them dancing dudes? It's like them dudes that be dancing. So we didn't know. And we met Will because Will came to check us out. This is like again 1997, and he was with Ron DeVoe of New Edition.
Wow! And
we thought that was the coolest shit ever. That New Edition
it was in 1997. Yeah,
it was like Will was like, yeah, we're going to Magic Mountain with Ron DeVoe, and it was like, word. You guys know Ron DeVoe? Like, oh my god! Like, you know how you first go to LA and everybody starts name dropping.
Big deal, yeah, hell yeah.
So yeah, we recorded this thing, and then we, thought we were going to be famous, and of course we were not. And there's a bunch of other side quests that come from doing hip hop in California on underground labels that sell drugs to fund the label that we don't need to get into. But I had some fun with hip hop, so I have a love of hip hop. So my critique doesn't come from this place of like, fuck these Negroes, they don't know how to act right. I've never really appreciated that stance that a lot of people took in the 90s with underclass ideology. And I never really I didn't mind the ghetto gangster turn of rap. I think music has to be more than one thing for it to be interesting. right? If everything was
So
some dude, some lyrical miracle dude, it would suck.
it would absolutely suck. And to my own experiences, right? Where, again, I literally go from from Biggie
Mhm.
being the centerpiece of my, cultural upbringing
Mhm.
to, becoming this massive Jay-Z fan. It wasn't just me, it was just me and all the dudes in my crew and like my neighborhood. And like, this is what we were about. And, when Jay-Z would talk about getting some shit, at no point did I think to myself, oh, I want to get a Rolex and I'm going to sell cocaine in order to do it. It was like, nah, like I need to get a good ass job so I can get a nice apartment, maybe one day get a nice watch, maybe get a couple bitches in the process. Like,
You didn't watch The Godfather and think you were going to join the mafia, right?
no,
Yeah,
like when
same thing.
Jay-Z talking about all the crazy shit he was doing on the streets,
Mhm.
I never thought to myself, like, that's how I'm going to achieve those ends, meaning the girls and the great crib and the cars and to take care of your family and yada yada. So I never understood this idea that people were being socialized to be quote unquote gangsters.
Mhm.
I just could never accept that as an idea.
Especially if it's supposed to be a reflection of the community that already exists, right? If
Right.
it's supposed to be a reflection of what's already existing, then how can these people be creating more gangsters?
Right.
If you watch talk shows of that era, they might tell you a different story, but that's
Yeah.
talk shows of that era, and a lot of that is BS. But that comes back down to underclass ideology, and then it
Yes.
becomes what becomes profitable, right? If having a podcast talking about hip hop is profitable, everybody's going to want to have a podcast talking about hip hop. It's just some monkey see, monkey do shit. And I think once NWA really hits, I know a lot of people try to predate it to Ice-T, 6 a.m. Ice-T at that time to me.
Phenomenon though.
No,
Like
it was not.
he wasn't.
No, he was the guy in the Breaking movies to me.
Mm.
And I'm not, no disrespect to Ice-T. I mean,
Yeah.
please don't come after me, Ice-T. You still are a frightening individual. That didn't have the cultural relevance outside of his area like Straight Outta Compton did for NWA.
Right.
Where there's now a fashion aesthetic.
Yeah.
There's a uniform, like all that shit gets done with that album. And then the more cultural production behind it, if you think about the movies. So Colors, which is kind of a wonderful, fanciful story about police in Los Angeles that are outnumbered by technologically advanced gangsters. And it shows you not one battering ram in that movie. When that movie is being made, some of the biggest travesties that lead you to the LA riots have already happened within LAPD. But one thing that movie does that I think everybody should watch that movie for this one reason. There's an amazing scene where there's a town hall meeting and everyone in the community is yelling about why the police aren't there to stop these people from shooting up their neighborhoods. In that same breath, they're also yelling at the police for harassing their kids who aren't the problem. If that movie spent more time interrogating that phenomenon
of needing police while also understanding that it comes with consequences for people who aren't even involved.
Ross, it's 20 that movie came out with 88.
Yeah.
It's 2024, right? I'm still registered in California, even though I live in Mexico now. And we're seeing a rollback of reforms that were done before all this defund stuff to keep people out of prisons, because there was a time in California, because we had 3 strikes laws, that prisons were so overcrowded, cats was dying in there every day. Multiple people just dying, waiting. I'm not talking about stabbings and killing people waiting for healthcare. Not even people that got into intake. They're like, look, okay, we're arresting too many people, and against our better judgment, we're going to raise, grand theft, to $1,000 and all this other stuff they did, right? And now you got mayors trying to roll some of this stuff back because people want more police again because property theft. We're not talking about drive-by shootings like we were in the 80s and 90s.
No.
We're talking about property theft. And granted, I'm a raggedy Negro that drives a raggedy car, and I'll be real mad with my cheap ass insurance if somebody busts out my window, because that means I got to pay because I got a high ass deductible because I got cheap ass insurance. I'm gonna be mad, right? I'm gonna be real mad. I'm gonna be like, nigga, just burn it, light it on fire. Don't play with me, right? So I feel the frustration of people that have been broken into. I feel, Nick, I feel your frustration. That being said, we know how this works. You lock up more people, you build more prisons. You don't solve the problem. Numbers are going to go down, but that's temporary. And you're going to have a whole new slew of issues. And it's mass incarceration 2.0.
Right.
Is that really what we want? Is hip hop the reason for that? No, I don't think so.
It's absurd. I just think it's just an absurd notion that this thing that's been commodified can also serve as the engine, the thing that engineers social change, like mass social change on a scale that would be needed to quote unquote free Negroes in America.
Oh, wow.
You know, because if you talk to, it's funny, man. If you talk to some of our fancier Negroes, a lot of them will tell you that Negroes are still slaves in America.
To what?
I don't know.
I don't know. I've been a slave to the rhythm.
And the shackles now are in their corporate jobs where somebody might say something insensitive about their hairdo. Of course, that's the equivalent of working on a goddamn field in Louisiana in August with no AC.
At some point, you should go work a job where you really have stakes that you can lose like that. Like, working in the Gulf is a non-union industry. Most of those jobs are non-union. My job, everybody in the rig was non-union.
Exploitative as fuck.
So they were doing this thing that I had never seen before, where they were bringing in Filipino dudes on these contracts. So these Filipino dudes would sign contracts in the Philippines that they said, okay, we're supposed to get so much money. It's like any other job agency. And they were paying them bullshit money, and everything they would do was an expense. And I'll never forget this. I was leaving because you have to take a helicopter. Sometimes you have a helicopter you take out, or a boat. It's one time I had helicopters. I'm leaving with the helipad, and this guy, we're changing our shifts. This grown ass man, crying, holding a check for $80. He had been out there for 3 months.
Jesus.
Like,
Jesus
go talk about your hairdo when people live in these real kind of conditions. There's something to be said. I think you spent some time in the professional world as well. There's something to be said about being in the professional world and being, one of a handful of black people. And I didn't see the camaraderie.
My individual experience at work better, at Spotify, at the Ringer, whatever, better, when there is a better cultural sensitivity to who I am and where I'm from. Individually, it's great. Now, are the products that we're putting out as a company now uplifting the masses of black because of that? Like, I don't think that that's the case, and just this idea that these products can be revolutionary, like this music, right? Like, again, if you wanted to stay on the block and stay in the parks, then that's cool. But once you want to turn it into something that people pay their bills with, meaning you're now selling it out in the world, and now that you're selling it, you're going to want to scale it. And now that you want to scale it, who are the people who help you achieve that end? White people?
Well, what are we doing? Jason England makes a great point in that show where he talks about the first big contract for hip hop, which is the Sugar Hill Gang.
Yes.
So you have some dudes from Jersey signed by a black woman on a black label.
Black owned business, Jason, by black.
This is all black shit. And those dudes talk about how it was the worst contract of all time, yada, yada, yada. And again, these are the kind of contradictions that people don't like to talk about. And they're important to discuss. And it's also, look, I'll be really honest, and I hope people, I hope I'm not selling my show short. And I want to really, and I mean this with all sincerity, Brother Waz. I appreciate, now I sound like Cornel West. I really appreciate you saying such nice things about what we do at TIR, This is Revolution, because we don't do everything that hurts my feelings as white supremacy. Because we don't say that, and because we're not stuck in 1969's idea of what black power looks like, you're going to lose a lot, because let's be honest, we sit in a certain place for most people that consume this kind of media. And when you see black people not talking about black shit, quote unquote, right? Those episodes don't do as well. We do talk about foreign policy, and we do talk about music that I played. I played heavy music for years, and I definitely talk about it. And we always talk about hip hop because it's something that we all love. We talk about house music. Some of those shows do better, but I'm not naive to the fact that being a black dude that does not just quote unquote black content, or what people think black content is, and I hate using the word content anyway, it's just so generic. I'm a black dude that does a show with some other black people, but we talk about whatever the hell we want to talk about. And that's freedom to me. And I understand that there's maybe a few cultural limitations, because it's still odd for people to see. But it's odd for people to see because motherfuckers, feel so comfortable to fit a market niche instead of just doing what they want to do. That's why I love punk rock. Heroes
the ethos is doing what you want to do.
Do what you want. Good people, regardless of color. And one of them was on the show recently, Eugene Robinson. Solid brother. Been in the punk world for a long time. Help you out. They take you aside. If you want to do this shit, do this shit. Do what you want to do. If you don't like it, then you don't do it.
I have a question, and I want to get you out of here on this. Have you seen American Fiction?
Nigga, I finally did it, and I bought it. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm so happy. I'm so happy I could talk to you about this, because it's very related to what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Where this idea that the educated non-ghetto Negro is actually the most oppressed Negro.
Oh.
Especially in the culture industry. Because the fancy Negro, Jason, has no outlet for his art. Nobody wants to buy or put out or fund or support his fancy Negro art. All they want is that ghetto shit, Jason. They just want ghetto shit. And by the way, and how I'm going to take it back to this conversation we had about hip hop, about rap music, and sort of, underclass ideology. I think what gets left unsaid in the movie that I haven't seen enough critics point out is that the subtext is that what this nigga's complaining about is rap music. Is actually like, that's actually what the nigga's bitching about, because the bottom line is like movies, TVs, literature, the dominant forms of black expression in those forms is not underclass shit.
Nope.
It's actually fancy nigga shit. It's actually Ibrahim X Kendi. It's actually Donald Glover. It's actually those homies who dominate film and TV. But the dominant form of black cultural expression in America is rap music.
Sure.
And the rappers who actually dominate mostly are not fancy Negroes. Like Kodak Black ain't a fancy Negro.
No, he's
just
not. Okay, well, do
And
you
it's like
remember?
the
Are you
Perfect
old?
Pets, but
Uh-huh.
like I'm just saying, like the movie, what they're really mad about is that the most popular form of Black artistic expression is rap music and it's ghetto as fuck, and these people are pissed about it.
Can I tell you something I'm working on right now?
Yes, please.
Ben Burr just called me the other day and goes, Jason, what are you working on? I said, I'm working on this thing. I was like, you know how I always want to use a title of a song for my pieces. I always use a music title. So, I was listening to some old hip hop and I was like, I think I'm going to call it The Rebirth of Slick, the last gasp of the Black PMC. And it's about American fiction. And I can't think of the name of the movie. There's another movie that's out right now that's based on Elizabeth Wilkerson's Cast book that Ava DuVernay is doing. So the 4 years ago is not that long ago, but it feels like a lifetime ago. But 4 years ago, after all the George Floyd stuff broke off,
The Great Awakening.
The Great Awakening, as my co-host calls it. All these Negroes got tons of grant money. There's money going to Negroes left and right. That was not forever. And now it's all drying up.
Yes.
So the politics of racial grievance for the PMC, and there's one thing that the PMC was able to do, and M. Toussaint actually pointed this out to me when her and I were having one of our famous long production meetings, as we call it. She goes, I think what you're saying, Jay, is that the Black PMC learned how to monetize underclass ideology. And that's kind of how I look at Kendi. That's kind of how I look at Lee Daniels, because in the movie American Fiction, the white people in the movie are Black people in real life. Lee Daniels is the one that's credited for saying this book is the most important book in Black literary, blah, blah, blah. That's Lee Daniels talking about Push by Sapphire, which later becomes Precious. The director guy, the white director guy in the movie is Jordan Peele. That's not a white, you know what I mean? So this idea that it's the silliness of white liberals. What really pissed me off about the movie, it starts off, if you haven't seen it, you'll see it eventually. I don't like the spoiler thing. It's been out long enough. Watch the movie. It starts off with the teacher giving a lesson, and in the lesson he says the word and the N word. He says nigger. And there's a white student in his class that goes, I'm offended by this. You can't say that word. And Jeffrey Wright's character is like, well, I got over it. You can too. She storms out of class. He gets mad. He gets in trouble. That's not in the book whatsoever. The book is more about Black class structures.
Yes.
The book is called Erasure by Percival Everett. And when you watch that scene, it gives you this idea of insane white liberals. Those people exist. We can't act like they don't exist. They do exist. This is what the book kind of ignores. My personal friends that I talk to on a daily basis, some of which I won't name their names, told me extremely similar stories, if not verbatim. But it wasn't white kids complaining. It was Black kids complaining. Always trying to get teachers fired for teaching things like Reconstruction. So it's insane to assume that all this is going on and everybody is just, we're all this one unified thing. What I saw with that movie was this kind of, we're going to shit on woke ideology from a real corny place, and we're going to do it with some antiquated tropes. Because if you think about successful Black cinema in 2024 and beyond, it's not ghetto shit like that anymore. That Precious thing had its moment. The 90s had its moment. It's over. Negroes love Wakanda.
Yeah.
The numbers tell you that.
Period. Right? Negroes, the shit they're going to support for the most part is going to be just flashy Black excellence. Like that's Black what excellence. They're going to get behind.
That's what it looks like. Show me a movie that hasn't been successful that doesn't look somewhat like that. These hood stories, they still make them to a certain extent, but they don't resonate the same way that Black excellence resonates.
Yep.
So,
By the way, I enjoyed American Fiction for how it operated as a movie. There was plenty of times where I laughed, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a movie worth seeing on entertainment value, but the movie is trying to tell us that it has a political message.
Oh.
And because I've been left pilled, I think the political message is bullshit.
There's no class in the movie. The
Exactly.
Black class is the maid in the movie. What's interesting in the book, the maid
is an angel sent down from heaven.
Oh my, she's Mammy. In the movie, she's Mammy. In the book, she's a nuisance. In the book, she is a nuisance to the family, and once the sister dies, it's even more of like, what we're gonna do with this freaking, Mam? How we gonna get rid of Mammy now?
Yeah,
she ain't got no money. So I tell people of late, I'm like, look, if you want to read a book, please read Erasure by Percival Everett. If you want to have just this amazing window onto class contradictions, onto, like you said, the tensions within Black class. The fake novel that's in the movie is literally the whole novel's in the book. The third of the book is 100 pages is him writing this fake novel, which is Native Son by Richard Wright, but with all Black people on it. So think about a book like Native Son. If you haven't read the book, I'm sure you've watched one of those fucking shitty movies they made off of it. So think about Native Son, but with all Black people, and it's just as effective. Right. So to leave all that out, to have your opportunity to make this really cool experimental movie makes me look at American Fiction like, fuck y'all. And it makes me really want to go hug Boots Riley next time I see him, because back to that punk rock ethos that he has in spades, I'm going to do the movie I want to do to tell a story about the system that I fucking hate.
Right.
And it ain't call centers, it's capitalism. And he did it again with his TV show, I'm a Virgo. It's arty, it's surreal, it's entertaining, it's fun. You want to watch that? Hell, go watch Hollywood Shuffle by another. I want to make this movie because I'm tired of these crackers telling me what to do. Robert Townsend movie with Keenan Wayans. Brilliant film. Some of the jokes may be of its time. It came out in 1987. But if that's what you want to see, that kind of fun satire, that's to me more worth your time. Sorry to bother you. I'm a Virgo or Hollywood Shuffle.
Man, Jason, thank you for your time today, man. Really appreciate this convo, man. This was dope. Obviously, like I said, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing over there at This Is Revolution. Please plug your stuff. Tell the people where to find you.
Oh, man. You can find me on youtube.com/This Is Revolution podcast. We're on all the places where you guys listen to podcasts. I also write in Damage Magazine. My last column there was, or article there was The Man Who Sold the World, about anti-racism and Ibrahim X. Kendi. And I have a newer article out about the way about the discourse around electoral politics, called Same As It Ever Was, in Sublation Magazine, which I write a column as well. So.
All right, folks, that's our show for today. Make sure you become a Patreon at patreon.com/CountTheDings. Shouts to Jason Myles. Shouts to my man, John Gervais, for keeping the trains running on time on the 1s and 3s. We'll see you guys next week. Peace out.